Here we are, week 4 in our series on 6 ways we encounter God. We have our small groups going during this 6-week period. And if you're in a small group, I hope you'll stick with it. Do not flag in your zeal to be a part of that. You know, it's kind of like eating. When you miss a meal, you don't say, oh, dang, well, you know what? I'm not doing any good at that meal thing, so I'm just going to give up on eating. You don't do that. You make up for it the next meal. So if you miss one of your small group meetings, don't give up. Get back into that book that we're all going through every day. Read the scriptures, write your little reflections. Stick with it. This week, the topic is God's authority and my obedience. You know, from the beginning, I just think that from the very beginning, humans have struggled with the concept and the practice of obedience and someone else having authority. Toddlers chafe at their parents' restrictions. And you know, I'm finding that teenagers positively rebel at their parents' restrictions. I don't know about you. But, you know, there's something about authority we don't like unless, of course, we're exercising it. Many adults don't like to obey. Rules get in the way of what we want to do. Yet good rules, I'm saying good rules, serve a very important purpose. And here comes your first fill in the blank if you're using that sermon outline. Good rules serve the purpose to protect us. Now, hear me now. The 10 Commandments, all the way to walking by the Spirit, are God's rules that do exactly that. Obedience to God's directions is the path for us to come out of our sinful ways into the beauty of the divine presence. They protect us from succumbing, being overcome by the evils of this world that would destroy us. So let's talk a moment about God's authority. The 4th video of our discipleship series. How many of your groups have already seen the 4th video? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you're in the same group, so that okay. So a few have, and a few, you're going to see it within a day or two now. The 4th video of this discipleship series, the author, Tom Berlin, walked around government buildings in Washington, D.C., pointing to inscriptions over the doors of many of these buildings, inscriptions chiseled into the concrete or the stone, words that all the people who walk through the buildings walk under as they go about their work. And the words are there to remind them that their work is not about themselves, their desires, their preferences, their enrichment. And then he asks at the end of the video, he asks us, what are the words you are living under? And what do those words say about who you serve? Those who are sent to Washington, D.C., or who work in the government are supposed to serve and guard the rights of the people of this republic. One building's words caught my eyes. I wrote it down. It says, where law ends, tyranny begins. The government must operate under the authority of the people by the consent of the governed. You know, that's unique in world history. This republic founded 250 years ago, where the government operates with the consent of the governed, under the authority of the people. Ultimately, all of whom are under the authority of God. Not a theocracy, but a republic consisting of virtuous people living under God. Yet it seems to me, it's my observation that this nation has forgotten just how essential is God's authority to our living and to our liberty. In truth, none of us really likes authority, except, as I said earlier, when we're exercising it. And it really started with that first man and that first woman when they challenged their Creator's authority, following, of course, the urgings of someone we know all too well. This someone is still with us. He's independent and powerful and rational and brave, and he's the hero of many novels and films and even moral philosophies. This person I'm talking about permeates our culture and guides our politics, and his proper name is Lucifer, the one who arrogated to himself the godlike characteristic of defining good and evil, and doing so apart from God. So the first man and the first woman followed his lead, not allowing God to be God, wanting instead to be as God in their own right. And it was, and it is, a rebellion against God's authority. It's a rebellion that is with us still today. Last week I mentioned that some biblical scholars believe or have speculated that the prophet Isaiah was executed by a jealous king, angered by his calls for purity and holiness. When asked by whose authority he called the king and the nation to account, the prophet Isaiah said, "In the year King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord seated on a throne and exalted." In other words, he says, I speak by God's authority. The Jews demanded of Jesus, "What miraculous sign can you show us to prove your authority for what you do?" And Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it up in 3 days." Referring, of course, to himself and what he would do on the cross. You see, his resurrection is his authority. So that's God's authority. What about my obedience? What about your obedience? Last week we summarized Isaiah's encounter with God in 4 words. So I asked anybody remember that. Somebody from the choir read them out to me. Those 4 words we used to summarize Isaiah's encounter with God. They're cheating in the choir because they just throw their sermon outline into their choir folder, and next week, it's there. Majesty, worship, confession, cleansing or forgiveness. And then there's a 5th word to describe Isaiah's encounter with God, and that is calling. You can write that one down this week, calling. Isaiah said, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send and who will go for us?' And I said, 'Here am I.'" God had a mission for Isaiah, just as he has a mission for each one of us. And Isaiah's response was to obey. What's your response? When Jesus calmed the storm on the Sea of Galilee, the astonished disciples there in the boat with him said, "Who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him?" And it engendered in them a fear, a respect, and an admiration, and then a longing to follow him and be part of his purpose. That, my friends, is obedience. The desire to be part of God's purpose. "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me," Jesus said. As the culture drifts away from Christian influence, we have to ask ourselves, how much are we drifting with it? Christians still call on the name of the Lord, I know this, especially when they need help. But how do we respond when the Lord calls upon us? Whose authority do we really live under? And yet he has given us words to live by. Just like those words inscribed in the buildings in Washington, D.C., there are words that guide or ought to guide the Christian. St. Paul had some of those words. He writes here in Romans, "Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." I want us to consider those words this morning. Let's take a hard look at them and see how they apply to you and me for our Christian living. First of all, let's look at that first phrase. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Other translations say it like this, and be not fashioned according to this world, or don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Or don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold. So taken together, all these translations, I think we could paraphrase it like this. Don't try so hard to fit into the culture that you no longer think and act like a Christian. That can happen sometimes for Christians who want to be so relevant that they become irrelevant, really, like salt without its flavor. Or they so want to avoid being looked down upon or criticized or made fun of that they just kind of slide in with those around them. In fact, the world is actively working against Christianity and Christians. So don't be surprised at that. And Paul says, don't give in and don't get swept away. There's two words here that I think help us understand what's being said to us in these words under which we are to live. The first word I want to go to is world. You can write that one down. It doesn't refer to this planet as if Paul means to say, don't enjoy the creation God has made. He's not talking about the beauty of a sunrise or a sunset or Lake Tahoe or wherever you go to see beautiful scenery. Paul does not mean don't enjoy life. I mean, he writes to Timothy later on, everything created by God is good. God richly provides us with everything to enjoy. Anybody remember this old hymn? This is my Father's world. And to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spheres. The New Testament uses two words when it talks about the world. The first one is cosmos. We get the word cosmonaut or cosmetic from that word. You can find it in the first letter of John. The second word is the one that Paul is using right here. That's the Greek word aeon. That's where we get the word eon, eons of time. And that's exactly what he's saying here. It usually translates as age. Not like our age, how old are you, but a period of time. In the New Testament, there are two main ages. This present age of sinful darkness, from which we have been rescued by the Lord Jesus Christ. And the second age to come, the age to come when Jesus will return and reign on earth. So the text here that Paul writes, these words for us, literally reads, don't be conformed to this age. What's this age, the present age? It's the age of sinfulness and darkness from which we've been redeemed by Jesus. But we're still living in that age. And why should we not be conformed to it? Because this age is coming to an end sooner than we think. And when it does, everything about this age will crumble to dust. We know that there's a better age to come when Christ will reign on earth, so ours is to live today by the values of tomorrow. For tomorrow will come, and we must live in this present age, but this present age must not live in us. So you get it here? When he's talking about the world. The second word I want to focus on is conform. The word conform here translates a complex Greek word which Well, in English, we get the word scheme from this Greek word. I think maybe a better way to translate it in this passage here would be like entrapment. You know those emails you get from the widow in Africa who's got $5 million coming to her? She only needs to deposit $10,000 in your bank account. Just please send me your bank account number and your password and your social security number, whatever, Entrapment. That's what Paul is writing to us here. He's saying, we can find ourselves being sucked in to things, often little by little, when we find our way into the world's way of thinking. You've heard of the proverbial frog in the kettle? If you take a frog and throw him in a pot of boiling water, he'll jump right out. But if you take a frog and throw him into lukewarm water and then turn up the heat, he'll stay there till he dies. Paul is saying, didn't you know that? Try it sometime. Okay, you learn something new all the time, don't you? That's okay. Write down on their frog in the kettle. Then you'll go home and you'll look at that and go, what the heck is that all about? Yeah. The word here that Paul uses for conform can also mean to fashion, in the sense that we're not to follow the fashions of this world. He's not talking about clothing, but not to think or act or otherwise fashion ourselves after the schemes of this world. True worldliness means to buy into the notion that this world, this age, is the only world there is and ever will be. As though all the plans and the politics and the programs and the schemes of man will last forever. And here's the implication for us. If this life, I want you to think long and hard on this one. If this life is the only life there is, with all of man's programs and plans and schemes and politics, if this is all there is, then why not do whatever you want? Indulge yourself. Cast off all restraints. Anybody here ever been to Las Vegas? And will admit it? There's an entire city built upon this very premise. It's the ultimate, unvarnished appeal to live as if there is no tomorrow. Why do you think casinos have all the windows darkened? So once you're in there, you don't know if it's day or night. It's only now. That's worldliness. Here's what Jesus says. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? And Jesus means more than our physical existence when he says life. There's some people who get drunk on alcohol. Did you know that? And there are others who get drunk on sexual pleasure. And there's others who get drunk on building an empire, whether it be business or geopolitical. Or they get drunk on power, or money, or fame, or ambition, or even revenge. I had a guy in my last church in Palo Alto told me that he was kind of halfway addicted in his younger age to extreme kind of sports that were really high risk taking. Come to think about it, most young men go through that, don't they? But he was extreme. Some people even get drunk on revenge. Living like that makes all the sense in the world if tomorrow never comes. Why not grab for all you can? Remember, worldliness is living as if this age will never end. So, let me put it to you like this. Think about this. If you really want to be a rebel teenagers, adults, if you really want to be a rebel against the status quo, become a disciple of Christ. Because the status quo of this age is the one of do it all for myself. Make him the authority that you live under, and you'll be going against the flow every single day. If you believe that a better world is coming, a world in which Jesus' authority covers all and everybody, then live today in light of that tomorrow. If you get that into your head, as Paul is saying, your mind will be renewed and your life transformed. Now, I got to warn you, if you're really serious about being that kind of rebel, living under Jesus' authority, if you're really serious about that, there are going to be a lot of people who won't understand you. And you'll often feel squeezed, but at least you won't wake up with a hangover from getting drunk by the ways of the world. I had this friend 30 years ago. He was in his 80s at the time. He'd been a Methodist pastor for over 40 years. And I remember these words that he spoke to me, stuck with me all this time. He said, "Richard, I want you to remember that Christians have always been a minority, even in the church. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world." So let's go to the second half of this passage from Romans and look at God's will. Part 2 says that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. A couple of other translations say, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. Another one says that by your testing, you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. This phrase, I want you to put it in context. This phrase comes at the end of Paul's call to present our bodies as living sacrifices to the Lord. Just like Isaiah said, "Here am I, send me." So, right in the midst of that, Paul says, then you will be able to test and approve what is God's will. You know, a lot of people, a lot of Christians, think that the will of God is something they got to discover. And they're having a hard time discovering what's the will of God for my life. What's God's will for my life? And they think maybe it's in some secret compartment that I got to find, hidden away by God, separated from the rest of my living. You know, like it's completely separate. Once I find that, you know, things will be okay. I'll be on the right path. And so they search and they pray and they read books and become frustrated and give up. You are so fortunate that you came here this morning because I'm going to reveal the secret to you this morning. Knowing God's will cannot be separated from our ongoing walk with God. Let me put it this way. Knowing God's will is really just a subset of knowing God. And that's what this discipleship series that we're engaged in is all about. Knowing God. 6 different ways to encounter God. It's not limited to 6, of course, but we got 6 weeks in Lent, so that's where it knows. Works out real well. Knowing God's will is a subset of knowing God. That's the secret. Read Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. That's what that whole message is all about. The more you pursue knowing God deeply, the more likely you will end up exactly where God wants you to be. And here's the other side of that. As long as you refuse to present your body as a living sacrifice, and by that I mean you walk out of here today and you leave your spiritual body, so to speak, right here in the pew. And that part of you doesn't go with you. as long as you refuse to offer your body as a living sacrifice, as it says, as long as you insist on following the ways of the world, you can forget about knowing God's will for your life. It's just not going to happen. The Greek word that translates this word test, or prove, or discern, or know, or approve, is a word that's used to describe the process of examining gold ore to determine if it is genuine or not. Remember last week the topic was God's purity, my humility, and I talked about bottled water. We found out this week that Fiji water is the best water to buy in a bottle. We got it on good authority. What? How many of you buy bottled water? You hope it's pure, more pure than the tap water, right? Otherwise, why buy it, right? Now, if you're going to buy precious metals, say you're going to buy a gold coin. You want the one that is advertised as 69% pure gold, or the one 99.99% pure gold, right? So this word that Paul is using here is the same word for determining purity. Testing to see if it's pure. It's not about discovering God's will as much as it is proving or approving that God's will is always good and acceptable and perfect. Psalm 18 says, "As for God, his way is blameless. The word of the Lord is tried." It reminds me of G.K. Chesterton's quote. He was a British novelist way back in the last century. And he said one time that it's not that Christianity has been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and not tried. And isn't that what we do with God's ways? It looks difficult to me, better not try it. But here's the thing. God's will is good. You can write that word in there, good. Doing things God's way will always prove to be of ultimate benefit. Operative word there, ultimate. Sin brings pleasure for a short time. If sin were always immediately unpleasant, then people would do a whole lot less of it, right? Sin always looks good at first. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. Just want to give you a little piece of advice here. Satan's apples always have worms. They look great on the outside, but there's worms on the inside. You know, there's only one thing worse than biting into an apple and finding a worm. That's biting into an apple and finding half a worm. Satan's apples always have worms, but God's will and his way are always good for us in the long run. How long is God's long run? Forever. That's a long time. Number 2, God's will is acceptable. Live in such a way that when you get to the end of your life, or that when you stand before God, he's going to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." How many of you want to hear those words about your life? Well done, good and faithful servant. You know, it's not easy, because carrying a cross is never an easy thing to do. But in the end, those who live for Christ will be happier than those who don't. It's really as simple as that. Third word here that Paul uses, God's will is perfect. Perfect means whole and complete, reaching its intended destination. If you live for God, you will come to the end of your life satisfied. If you live for the world, you're going to get the world's rewards, which will satisfy you for a short time. Living God's way will take you into eternity. Proverbs 4 says, "The path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until the full day." So let me just wrap it up with this story about a man that you may have heard of. Some of you may never have heard of him, but you have heard of something that he began. 1940, a man named Harlan Sanders developed a recipe for fried chicken, of all things, with 11 herbs and spices. Many years of hard work on his part brought him success with his Kentucky Fried Chicken, a name that is now spread around the whole world. At his original restaurant in Corbin, Kentucky, by the way, is in the hills in eastern Kentucky, rather poor part. It's Appalachia, right on the edge of Appalachia. At his original restaurant, there's a sign that explains Colonel Harlan Sanders' philosophy. The title of this, I'm going to read it to you. The title of it is The Hard Way. Oh, that'd be a great sales effort, wouldn't it? Yeah, let's just send this out to businesses around. Okay, you want to succeed? Here's the hard way. Here's what he wrote. "It is comparatively easy to prosper by trickery, the violation of confidence, oppression of the weak, sharp practices, cutting corners, all those methods we are so prone to palliate and condone as business shrewdness. It is difficult to prosper by the keeping of promises, the deliverance of value and goods and services, and denouncing the so-called shrewdness with sound merit and good ethics. The easy way is efficacious and speedy, the hard way arduous and long. But as the clock ticks away, the easy way becomes harder and the hard way becomes easier. As the calendar records the years, it becomes increasingly evident that the easy way rests upon a hazardous foundation of shifting sands, whereas the hard way builds solidly on a foundation of confidence that cannot be swept away." That is exactly what Paul wants us to understand about God's way. And I'm not sure preaching and teaching and writing about this will do much good for people to understand it. We have to experience it really to get it. And that's what Paul was saying about testing it. The will of God can be known only by trial. You can never prove that God's will is good and pleasing and perfect except in the crucible of hard times and tough decisions. For God's purpose is to lead us into the liberty to do right. Obedience pleases God when we are in concert with God's will. That's the true obedience. That's really what the founders of our nation understood when they set up the Constitution for this republic, as they said, for a virtuous people who live under the authority of God. Our focus is not on keeping the rules of God, but on living in relationship with God. You know, knowing God's will comes from knowing God. God, you see, has really designed us for freedom. Not freedom to do whatever we want, but liberty in finding the strength of God to do what we should. Parents, isn't that what you want for your kids? Them to be free and to understand how to choose the good, the right, over the convenient or the momentarily pleasurable. It's not so much that we obey God, but that we agree with God and want to live as God directs. Okay? So it's with that whole understanding that we can say these words as words to live under. From Romans, let's say them together. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12, 2.